Welcome back to my animal education series. So today I'm going to talk about a quick trip that I took down to Puerto Rico about almost 2.5 years ago, and an organization that I was working with down there, Naturaleza. I had the opportunity to go down to Puerto Rico for a school service trip, and initially my entire motivation to go was to get away from my family and have a vacation on my own. But then when I got down there, it ended up being like one of the best trips I ever took. So if you guys ever get the opportunity to go and do a volunteer experience like this, is absolutely amazing, and I don't regret any part of it. But Naturaleza is the organization that we were going down there to work with. After Hurricane Maria in 2018, a lot of trees on the island died, so Naturaleza wanted to plant over 750,000 trees back on the island. So that's what I was down there to do and help move, and other groups were coming after me to plant the trees that I was moving around, to really put it simply. So we were helping out this organization for 2 days, and this organization had a bunch of trees laid out, and they have different sections for different stages of the tree's growth. On our first day, a big box truck full of, I think it was about 1,400 new saplings came in. So we unloaded all those trees into the first growing area, and then after that we put a bunch of trees that moved out of that first area into bigger pots so they can grow up and grow bigger, and we were moving trees to other growing areas. And then on day 2 we took the final growing stage and we loaded those up into a bunch of trucks, and we took them out to a field that was probably about 5 or 6 miles away from their main place there. And the group that came before us put a bunch of holes in the ground to plant a bunch of these trees, and I want to say we had right around 1,000 trees that we were planting that day. And then we took all the trees that were in those trucks, we unloaded them and put them in the holes, so that the group coming the next day or the next couple of days after us would fill in those holes and plant those trees after. And one thing that didn't even occur to me when we were until we were planting them is we couldn't plant the same species next to each other. We had 3 or 4 different species of trees, and we had to keep checking the tags on each tree and making sure that they're alternated, because you never go to a forest and see a bunch of trees together. Like, usually it's kind of spread out, it's all randomized. So we're trying our best to randomize how the trees were in this area. And they want to plant so many trees because since the hurricane killed so many of these trees, they have to build back some of the forests and some of the environment that the hurricane knocked out. And not only is this good for just looking at it, good for the island, but it's also great for wildlife, and reforestation is an extremely important part of this project. Reforestation for wildlife, for example, is great for encouraging more plant growth and more plant diversity, but also it benefits all sorts of animals. So the part of the reforestation project that I was a part of was the reforestation of rainforests, but another big part of their project is for mangrove reforestation. Mangroves are super important to all sorts of waterways, and especially the waterways in the coastlines of Puerto Rico. What these mangroves do is help clean the water first off, and it was a really elaborate root system. They provided habitats for a bunch of sea life, birds, and all sorts of other animals. So they kind of make habitats for all ranges, from all the fish and crustaceans out in the water to mammals and other rodents and reptiles that be using the trunks, and then the birds up in the tops of the trees. Another really cool thing that I did when I was down in Puerto Rico is I had the opportunity to go to a bioluminescent bay, and that was probably one of the highlights of the trip, other than working with Naturaleza. And this bioluminescent bay was on the eastern part of the island. Laguna Grande, I believe, was the name of it specifically. And we all went out on kayaks out to this bay for part of the tour, and unfortunately it was a full moon, and the moon was significantly brighter than the creatures in the water, creating the glowing, for lack of a better term. But we were able to put a tarp over some of the kayaks down there and look at all the blue and the glowing in the water, and I just think that was super cool. So if you ever have the opportunity to go to any sort of bioluminescent bay, one, try to see if you could do it during a new moon, when there's the least light possible, and you will not regret that. It is one of the coolest experiences. And if I didn't go down to Puerto Rico to help out with Naturaleza for part of this project, I would have had the opportunity to go sightseeing around the island as well, and you go and see this bay. at the end of the video here, I'm going to throw on a couple other things I really enjoyed seeing on my trip to Puerto Rico. We were staying in San Juan, so I had the opportunity to see a bunch of the forts there, and I saw a couple of art museums. And if you guys are familiar with the music video for Despacito, I saw the neighborhood where that was filmed. And a cool fact about that actually is that a bunch of the funds from that YouTube video and from that song went back into that community to help redo and repaint a bunch of the homes that were in there. So I thought that was pretty cool, and I saw all of the different colors in there. I had the opportunity to eat a bunch of local foods and see a bunch of really cool animals. A bunch of the people on my trip knew I was the animal guys. Every time we saw any animal, they let me know. So I saw a bunch of cane toads, I saw a bunch of green iguanas, I saw a caiman doing work for Parla Naturaleza. I saw the caiman, I think one of the places that we were planting trees, which I thought was really cool. A bunch of frogs, a bunch of anoles, a bunch of birds that some of the people working at Parla Naturaleza were telling me about, but it's been about 2.5 years since I've been there, so unfortunately I forgot a lot of those species names. But it was super cool to see all these animals out there in the wild, and just how many green iguanas there are. There are a lot, and if you go to a bunch of the forts, you're going to see a lot of those green iguanas as well. And thank you guys so much for watching this week's video, and a big thank you to Parla Naturaleza for allowing us to use plenty of those videos and sending us videos as well. And about 2.5 years ago, allowing me to come down there with my school and helping you guys plant and move a bunch of those trees. As I mentioned in the video already, I went down there for purely selfish reasons, but it ended up being like the best trip ever, and getting to work with a bunch of local people and local organizations. That was probably one of the best things ever. And if you talk to me anytime recently, like within the last year or so, I will brag about this trip and how awesome this trip was at any given opportunity, and how much I loved this trip. But again, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to hit a big thumbs up down below, subscribe to my channel, and as always, I will see you next week.